Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The sky above New York was heavy with late summer rain, the kind that blurs the city lights into rivers of gold. Jack Nolan hurried along the slick sidewalk, clutching a worn leather folder against his chest. His shoes were soaked, his heart heavier than the storm. 2 weeks ago, he had lost his job as a junior architect, and the student loans were piling up faster than he could count. The company apartment he had been promised was supposed to be ready today, but the building manager had mixed up the paperwork. When Jack finally pushed open the door to what he thought was Unit 630, he was met with the faint scent of jasmine and the sound of music playing softly from a Bluetooth speaker. A woman's voice, clear and rich, was humming along. She turned, startled, a glass of red wine trembling in her hand. "Who are you, and why are you in my apartment?" she demanded. Jack froze, dripping on the hardwood floor, realizing too late the brass number on the door read 603, not 630. "I am so sorry," he stammered. "I just moved in next door. They must have given me the wrong key." The woman set down her glass, eyes narrowing but curious. Her name was Mia Carter, the only daughter of Harold Carter, founder of Carter Developments, a name printed on half the skyline. She looked immaculate in a cream blouse and black slacks, but there was something guarded behind her confidence. Jack muttered another apology and backed toward the door, but her gaze lingered on the company badge clipped to his folder. "Nolan Architects," she read aloud. "Wait, are you available for contract work?" The question stopped him cold. "Contract work?" he echoed. "I am between jobs right now." Mia hesitated, her mind racing. Tomorrow morning, the tabloids were set to announce her broken engagement with a rival executive, a scandal that could cost her family millions in a merger. Desperation flashed behind her calm tone. "You need money, and I need a husband," she said simply. Jack blinked, thinking he had misheard. "Excuse me? A husband?" "Just for a month," she continued. "There is a charity gala, a press conference, and a board vote. If I show up single, my father loses the deal. If you help me, I will pay off every cent of your debt and fund your next project." Jack stared at her, the absurdity of it fighting with the exhaustion in his bones. "You are serious?" "Completely. It is a business arrangement, not romance. We sign papers, play the part, and walk away clean when it is over." She slid a crisp white contract across the marble counter. "All you have to do is pretend to love me in public." Thunder rumbled outside, echoing through the glass windows as Jack looked at her, at the woman who had just turned his worst night into a proposition straight out of a movie. "And if I say no?" he asked quietly. "Then I find someone else," she replied, her eyes steady. "But something tells me you do not want to walk back out into that storm." Jack looked at his reflection in the glass, tired, broke, and cornered by fate. He exhaled slowly, a half-smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "All right, Miss Carter. You have yourself a deal." The room fell silent for a beat, the storm easing into a soft drizzle outside. Mia reached out her hand, businesslike yet trembling slightly. "Welcome to the marriage neither of us believes in," she said. Jack took her hand, unaware that the signature he was about to make would change everything. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air still smelled like wet pavement and cold coffee. Jack Nolan woke up on the couch of his tiny sublet, the contract from last night lying on the coffee table beside a half-empty mug. His mind replayed Mia Carter's words again and again. A fake husband for 1 month. It sounded insane, yet the promise of clearing his debts and saving his sister's tuition left him no choice. He ran a hand through his damp hair and stared at the document. Every clause was precise, written in clean legal language. No intimacy, no personal interference, no emotions. It was strictly business. At 9 o'clock sharp, a black sedan pulled up outside his building. The driver rolled down the window. "Mr. Nolan? Miss Carter is expecting you." Jack hesitated for a heartbeat, then climbed in. The city passed by like a blur of glass and steel. When they arrived at the Carter estate, it felt like stepping into another world. The mansion was perched above the Hudson River, a perfect blend of modern architecture and old money elegance. Inside, Mia stood by the grand staircase, dressed in a cream blazer, her expression unreadable. "You came," she said simply. "I said I would." "Good. Let us make it official." She led him into her father's private study, where an attorney waited with a neat folder of documents. Jack's stomach tightened as he read the first page, temporary marital agreement. He looked at Mia, who signed her name with steady hands. "Just follow my lead," she murmured. When it was his turn, he hesitated only for a second before pressing the pen to paper. The click of the pen echoed through the room. It was done. They were married on paper. The attorney congratulated them both and left quietly, leaving a silence that seemed heavier than before. "You will stay at the penthouse downtown," Mia said, sliding a keycard across the desk. "The media will expect us to be seen together, so there will be public appearances. Our first is tomorrow at the press luncheon." Jack nodded slowly. "And what exactly do I do?" "Smile, answer a few questions, and pretend you love me," she replied, her voice cool but not unkind. That afternoon, Mia's assistant, Clara, arrived at the penthouse with a stylist and several garment bags. The living room turned into a whirlwind of fabric, cufflinks, and instructions. "Stand still," the tailor muttered, adjusting the shoulders of Jack's suit. Mia watched from across the room, arms crossed, her eyes sharp. "You clean up well," she admitted finally. "You mean I look less like a mistake?" Jack teased. For a moment, her lips twitched with something that almost looked like amusement. "Do not get used to it." Later that night, Jack stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. The light stretched endlessly below, like constellations trapped in glass. He could still hear Mia's voice from inside, firm and decisive, discussing schedules on the phone. He realized she lived in a world where every move was calculated, every emotion hidden. He wondered what it cost her to build those walls. Inside, she hung up and approached the balcony. "You do not have to think so hard," she said softly. "It is just 1 month." Jack turned toward her. "Maybe for you. But I have never been anyone's husband before, fake or not." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then think of it as practice." The night breeze carried the faint sound of laughter from the street below. For a brief second, Mia's face softened, her guard lowering enough for Jack to see the exhaustion underneath the perfection. He wanted to ask her why she was really doing this, but before he could, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening again. "Tomorrow, 11 a.m. sharp," she said. "Do not be late." Jack nodded, watching her disappear down the hallway. He leaned against the railing, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. The contract had promised no emotions, no strings. But as the night wind brushed against his skin, Jack could not shake the feeling that he had just stepped into something far more complicated than a simple deal. The next morning dawned with the sharp clarity of sunlight slicing through the curtains of the penthouse. Jack Nolan was already awake, straightening his tie for the 10th time as he practiced a polite smile in the mirror. His stomach felt like a knot of nerves. This was not just another meeting, this was the beginning of their public life together, the illusion they had promised to sell. At precisely 10:45, Mia Carter stepped out of her room, radiant in a navy suit dress, every detail perfect down to the pearl earrings that caught the morning light. "You are early," she said, glancing at him with an approving nod. "You look presentable." "That is the nicest thing you have said to me so far," Jack replied, trying to sound casual. Her lips curved slightly. "Do not push your luck." The black sedan waited downstairs, and the drive to the Carter Foundation headquarters was silent except for the steady hum of traffic. From the window, Jack watched the city unfold, the same streets he had walked as a struggling architect just days ago, now viewed from behind tinted glass. Inside the building, cameras flashed the moment they entered. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, over here," reporters called, their voices overlapping. Jack blinked against the onslaught of flashes, but Mia's hand slipped into his without hesitation. Her grip was steady, confident, rehearsed. "Smile," she murmured through her teeth. He did. Together they moved through the crowd, answering polite questions. When a journalist asked how they met, Mia smiled and said, "A mutual friend introduced us." It was unexpected, but sometimes the best things are. Jack almost laughed at the understatement. During the luncheon, he sat beside her as executives toasted their engagement. The sound of clinking glasses filled the room, and Jack felt the weight of curious eyes on them. Under the table, Mia's hand brushed against his again, just enough to sell the image of affection. Her composure was flawless, but when she leaned close to whisper, he caught the faint tremor in her voice. "You are doing fine. Keep smiling." For a moment, something shifted between them, not romance, not yet, but a flicker of shared understanding. When the event ended, they retreated to the limousine waiting outside. As soon as the doors closed, Mia exhaled, the tension melting from her shoulders. "That was exhausting," she admitted quietly. "You handled it better than I expected." "High praise from you," Jack said. "So what happens now? More parties?" "We have a few days before the next event. You will need to move into the penthouse officially. It will look suspicious if we live separately." Jack frowned. "You mean live together?" "Do not make it sound strange," Mia replied quickly. "It is only for appearances." That evening, movers arrived with his boxes, and soon his things mingled awkwardly with hers, his blueprints stacked beside her art books, his cheap coffee mug next to her crystal glasses. It felt surreal. At dinner, they sat across from each other in the vast dining room. The silence between them was thick but not entirely uncomfortable. Jack finally broke it. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" Mia paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Pretending what?" "That you are fine. That all of this is normal." She looked at him for a long moment before setting the fork down. "In my world, pretending is survival. You will learn that." Her words were firm, but her eyes betrayed something softer, a loneliness she kept buried under layers of control. Later that night, Jack wandered into the living room. The city stretched below like a sea of diamonds. Mia stood by the window, barefoot now, the facade stripped away. She turned when she sensed him behind her. "You should get some rest," she said quietly. "Tomorrow will be another performance." Jack nodded but did not move. "You are good at acting," he said. "Maybe too good." She gave a small, tired laugh. "Maybe that is the problem." For a moment, they stood in silence, two strangers bound by a lie that was starting to feel dangerously real. The contract had rules: no emotions, no attachment, but as Mia's reflection flickered in the glass beside his, Jack began to wonder how long either of them could keep pretending. The following days passed in a blur of schedules, fittings, and lessons in etiquette that made Jack Nolan feel like a student again. Mia Carter had turned their penthouse into a crash course on high society. There were mock interviews, dance rehearsals, and endless discussions about posture, speech, and how to hold a glass of champagne. Every mistake he made was met with Mia's dry, unamused look, but beneath her criticism was a faint trace of patience she did not want him to notice. "You slouch when you are nervous," she said one afternoon, adjusting the collar of his suit. "Straighten your shoulders. Confidence sells better than charm." Jack smirked. "And what sells better than confidence?" "Control," she replied without hesitation. "That is what they respect." Later that evening, Mia introduced him to her mentor and stylist, an older woman named Evelyn, who had known her mother. Evelyn was kind, offering Jack quiet advice while Mia observed from a distance. When the lesson ended, he found her standing by the piano, lost in thought. "You really think I can pull this off?" he asked. She looked at him, her expression softer now. You already are. For the first time, he saw something vulnerable in her eyes, not arrogance, but fear, the quiet kind that comes from years of pretending. The next day brought their second public appearance, a charity auction at the Grand Regency Hotel. The ballroom shimmered under chandeliers, and guests whispered as the glamorous couple entered arm in arm. Mia's hand rested lightly on his sleeve, her composure effortless. Remember, she murmured, speak less, smile more. Jack nodded, scanning the crowd of journalists, investors, and socialites. Everything went according to plan until a man approached, tall, smug, wearing a grin that reeked of history. Mia, he drawled, I did not know you were so quick to replace people. It was Richard Langford, her ex-fiancé, the man whose broken engagement had started this entire charade. Mia's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. Richard, she said coolly. You remember Jack, my husband? Richard's eyebrows lifted. Of course. The architect, right? How charming. Jack extended his hand with a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. Pleasure. Must have been quite a whirlwind romance, Richard continued, his tone dripping with mock admiration. Married so soon after our little misunderstanding. The reporters nearby turned their heads, hungry for drama. Mia's jaw tightened, but before she could speak, Jack slid his arm around her waist and said, when you know, you know. Some people spend years pretending to love for status. We just decided to be honest. A ripple of laughter and applause followed. Richard's smirk faded, and Mia looked up at Jack, surprised. For the first time, her smile was real. Later that night, as the event ended, they rode home in silence. The city lights painted moving patterns across Mia's face. You handled that well, she said finally. You saved me. I just did what a fake husband should, Jack replied lightly, but the warmth in his tone betrayed him. Back at the penthouse, Mia poured herself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter. Richard used to embarrass me in public when he wanted control, she said quietly. You embarrassed him tonight. Thank you. Jack studied her for a moment. You deserve better than a man who treats you like a prop. She smiled faintly. Says the man pretending to be my husband. He chuckled, but the sound was soft, thoughtful. The tension between them had changed, less hostile, more electric. Later, as she headed to her room, Mia paused at the hallway. Good night, Jack. Good night, Mia, he said, his voice low. When she disappeared behind the door, Jack looked at the contract pinned to the fridge, the rules, the signatures, the reminders of what this was supposed to be. But as he stared at the ink, he realized the lines between business and feeling were beginning to blur. The contract had not changed, but something inside both of them quietly had. By the time the following weekend arrived, the illusion of their perfect marriage had spread through every business magazine and social feed in the city. The Carter name was back on the rise, and Jack Nolan's face had become part of the narrative, the loyal, grounded husband who had tamed the heiress. But behind the glamour, he could feel how fragile it all was. Every smile, every photo, every touch in public was rehearsed. Yet somewhere in between those rehearsals, something had shifted. The next event was the annual Carter Foundation Gala, the biggest of the year. The ballroom gleamed with chandeliers, photographers lined the red carpet, and the air buzzed with anticipation. As they stepped out of the car, flashes erupted like lightning. Mia leaned close, her whisper barely audible. Remember what I said, speak less, smile more. Jack nodded, but his eyes lingered on her. The silk gown she wore shimmered with each step, and for a moment, the noise faded into silence. They entered the hall together, moving like a pair of actors who had rehearsed every scene to perfection. The night went smoothly until a reporter from the Herald asked, Mr. Nolan, how does it feel to marry into one of the most powerful families in the city? The question was loaded. Jack smiled, steady but sharp. It feels like an honor. But power is not something you marry into, it is something you earn. The crowd murmured with approval, and Mia's father, Harold Carter, gave an approving nod across the room. For once, Jack felt like he belonged there. As the orchestra began to play, Mia turned to him. "We have to dance," she said. "It is expected." "I will try not to ruin your shoes," he joked. She placed a hand on his shoulder, the other in his palm, and they began to move. At first, it was stiff, formal, two strangers pretending for an audience. But as the music slowed, their rhythm found itself. Her laughter was quiet, genuine, and it caught him off guard. "You are not terrible at this," she said. "Do not sound so surprised," he replied. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, everything around them, the music, the people, the cameras, seemed to fade. The dance ended, applause rose, and they stepped apart too quickly. Later that night, while guests mingled, Jack found a quiet corner near the terrace. The city lights glowed below, reflections scattered across the glass. Mia joined him a few minutes later, her heels clicking softly on the marble. "You did well," she said. "My father was impressed." "That makes one of us," Jack said with a half-smile. "I never thought I would make a convincing husband." "You are more convincing than you think." Her tone was thoughtful, almost wistful. They stood in silence, watching the lights ripple over the Hudson River. Then she added quietly, "Richard was there tonight. I saw him watching us." Jack turned toward her. "Does it bother you?" "It used to," she admitted. "But not anymore." Her honesty caught him off guard. The mask she wore in public slipped, and for the first time, he saw her as more than the heiress. She was human, fragile, trying to hold herself together. He wanted to say something comforting, but before he could, the crowd inside erupted in applause. The auction had ended, and Harold Carter was calling them to the stage for a closing toast. As they walked back in, Jack glanced at her. "One more performance," he said quietly. "One more," she echoed. They stood side by side as the cameras flashed, the perfect couple once again. But under the bright lights, as champagne glasses clinked and cheers echoed through the hall, Jack caught a glimpse of Mia's reflection in the mirror behind the podium. She was smiling, the kind of smile that hides exhaustion. And he realized that somewhere between the lies and the spotlight, he no longer wanted to play a part. He wanted something real, even if the contract said otherwise. The days after the gala felt different. The air between Jack Nolan and Mia Carter had changed, softer somehow, like the edge of a storm that had not yet passed but no longer threatened to destroy. Their routine continued: meetings, photographs, press appearances, but each encounter carried something unspoken. One evening, they found themselves alone in the penthouse after another long day of interviews. The city lights painted stripes of gold across the marble floor. Jack loosened his tie and glanced at Mia, who was staring out the window, her reflection overlapping the skyline. "You hate this, do you not?" he asked quietly. "All the pretending." She did not answer immediately. "Pretending is easier than admitting you are lonely," she said finally. Her honesty startled him. He had never heard her speak so openly. "You do not have to pretend with me," he said. She turned, her eyes glinting under the soft light. "That is not part of the contract." "Maybe it should be," he said with a half-smile. For the first time, she laughed, not the polite, rehearsed sound she gave to reporters, but a genuine laugh, quick and surprising. "You are impossible," she said, shaking her head. "And yet you are still here," he replied. That night, they ordered takeout and sat on the floor of the living room, eating noodles from paper boxes like two people who had forgotten the world outside. Mia talked about her mother, how she used to paint on weekends, and how her father had buried himself in work after she died. Jack listened, silent but attentive. When she asked about his sister, he told her about their childhood, the tiny apartment, the way they used to draw blueprints of imaginary houses on the backs of envelopes. It was the first time in years he had shared that memory aloud. The evening stretched into something neither of them had planned. When the rain began to fall, they moved to the balcony, watching droplets trace paths down the glass. "Do you ever wish you could start over?" Mia asked softly. Jack nodded. "Every day." She looked at him then, really looked, as if seeing him beyond the role, beyond the contract. Maybe we both needed this even if it started as a lie. The rain intensified, drumming against the railings. A flash of lightning lit the sky, and in that light, the distance between them disappeared. For a moment, Jack wanted to reach for her, to bridge the silence with something real, but the sound of her phone broke the spell. She glanced at the screen, and the warmth drained from her face. "It is my father," she said. "He wants us at the office tomorrow morning." "Is everything all right?" "I do not know," she murmured. The next day at Carter Developments, tension filled the boardroom. Harold Carter sat at the head of the long table, flanked by investors. Richard Langford was there too, a smug smile playing on his lips. "I have concerns," Richard said. "Your daughter's marriage, this sudden union, seems more like a publicity stunt than a partnership. Shareholders deserve transparency." Mia stiffened, but before she could respond, Jack spoke. "With respect, Mr. Langford, our marriage is none of your concern. The foundation's numbers speak for themselves." "And yet," Richard said smoothly, "if the marriage is fake, it affects the company's credibility." "Do you deny it?" The room fell silent. Jack glanced at Mia, whose hand trembled slightly on the table. He straightened, meeting Richard's eyes. "You want proof of commitment," he said. "Come to the next event. You will see everything you need to." Richard smirked but said nothing more. As they left the meeting, Mia turned to Jack, frustration etched across her face. "You did not have to defend me like that." "Yes, I did," he said simply. "Because I meant what I said." She looked at him, her anger fading into something softer. "You are going to ruin the lines between business and real life," she whispered. "Maybe they were never meant to be separate," he replied. That night, as they drove home, neither spoke. The city lights reflected in the car windows, and for the first time, Mia rested her head against his shoulder. Outside, New York glimmered with life, but inside the car, there was only quiet, the kind that felt like the beginning of something real. The following week should have been calm, but instead, it felt like walking through glass. Whispers began spreading, online articles suggesting the Carter marriage was staged, tabloids hinting that Jack Nolan had been paid to play the perfect husband. One headline read, "From architect to actor, the truth behind the Carter marriage." Mia Carter sat in her office, scrolling through the flood of comments that grew uglier by the hour. Her jaw was tight, her fingers trembling slightly as she locked her phone. When Jack walked in, she did not look up. "Do you have any idea what this is doing to my family?" she said sharply. "To my father's company?" "Mia, I did not leak anything." "You know that," he said firmly. "Do I?" she shot back. "Because it seems like every detail of our contract somehow got out." Jack froze. "You think I would do that? After everything? You needed money, remember? Maybe selling our story was easier than pretending you care." The words hit him like a punch. "That is not fair," he said quietly. "Nothing about this has been fair," she snapped. "This was supposed to be simple. You play your part, I protect the company, and we both walk away clean. But you had to complicate it." "Complicate it," he echoed, his voice rising for the first time. "You are the one who started to feel something real, and that terrifies you." Her eyes flashed. "Do not flatter yourself." Jack stepped back, the distance between them suddenly cold and sharp. "You know what? Maybe this was a mistake after all." He pulled a small silver keycard from his pocket and set it on the table. "I will stay somewhere else until the contract ends." Mia's throat tightened, but she kept her face blank. "That would be best." When he left, the silence felt heavier than any argument. The next morning, the penthouse was too quiet. The tabloids grew louder, and the company stock dipped slightly enough for the board to panic. Harold Carter demanded a public appearance to fix the damage. Mia agreed, even though her chest felt hollow. Meanwhile, Jack packed a small bag and moved into a short-term rental downtown. The city outside his window buzzed with life, but inside, everything felt empty. He missed the sound of her heels on the marble floor, the way she laughed when she forgot to guard herself. He told himself it was just fatigue, just guilt, but he knew better. A week later, he saw the headline that changed everything: Carter Foundation to hold press conference, marriage scandal response. His phone rang. It was Clara, Mia's assistant. "Jack, you should come," she said urgently. "Mia is going to address the press alone." Jack hesitated. "She does not want me there." "Maybe not," Clara said. "But she needs you." That night, Jack stood by the window, staring at the lights of the city he had thought he understood. Somewhere across that skyline, Mia was about to face a crowd ready to tear her apart. And despite everything she had said, he knew he could not stay away. The morning of the press conference arrived gray and cold, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Cameras had already crowded the entrance of the Carter Foundation by the time Mia Carter stepped out of her car. She wore a tailored black suit, her hair pulled back, her expression calm but unreadable. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Reporters filled every row, microphones pointed toward the podium. When she began to speak, her voice was steady. "There have been rumors questioning the integrity of my marriage," she said. "I will address them directly." Flashbulbs exploded like lightning. "My husband and I entered into a partnership that began as business, but what we built was more than publicity. I made mistakes. I tried to control a story that was never meant to be controlled. For that, I take responsibility." The crowd buzzed with questions, but before she could continue, a new voice echoed from the back of the room. "She is not the only one who should take responsibility." Heads turned. Jack Nolan stood at the doorway, rain still clinging to his coat. The room fell silent as he walked forward, every eye following him. He reached the podium and met her gaze. "You are not alone in this, Mia," he said quietly, but his voice carried through the hall. "Yes, this marriage started as an agreement. But somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. I fell in love with the woman behind the contract, the one who works harder than anyone in this room, who carries the weight of her family and still finds the strength to smile." A murmur rippled through the audience. Mia blinked, the composure she had built cracking for the first time. "Jack, you do not have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently. "You wanted honesty. So here it is." He turned toward the cameras. "I am not here for money or fame. I am here because I made a promise to stand beside her, through all of it. And I intend to keep that promise." The press erupted in questions, flashes blinding the stage. But all Mia could see was him. The man who had walked into her life by accident and somehow made every wrong moment feel right. When the chaos settled, she stepped closer to the microphone. "The contract ends today," she said softly. "But I think our story is just beginning." Jack smiled faintly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then let us start it together." She reached out her hand, and for a moment, the entire room fell silent again, not because of scandal, but because something real had replaced the act. As they walked off the stage side by side, the cameras kept flashing, but this time, neither of them cared. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky, once gray, was now streaked with light. Mia looked at him and whispered, "You really could not stay away, could you?" Jack laughed under his breath. "Not from you." The city hummed around them, alive and bright, as if the world had decided to rewrite their story at last. Weeks passed after the press conference, and for the first time in years, the Carter name was no longer tied to scandal but to redemption. The tabloids that once chased Mia Carter for controversy now ran stories about her new foundation initiative, a program that offered scholarships for young architects and artists. It was Jack Nolan's idea, and she had named it the 603 Project, a quiet tribute to the wrong apartment that started everything. The day of the launch ceremony arrived under a sky of pale gold. The event was small, held inside an old art gallery that Jack had helped restore. The place smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Guests moved between the exhibits, stopping to read plaques about community design and social housing. At the center of the room stood a framed sketch, Mia's first drawing, the one Jack had found months ago in her studio. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "To the mistake that changed everything." When she saw it, her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. Jack approached quietly, his usual calm breaking into a warm smile. "Do you like it?" he asked. "You kept this all this time," she said softly. "Of course. It reminded me that even the wrong doors can lead you home." She laughed through the emotion, brushing a tear away. "You are impossible. And you are late," he teased, checking his watch. "For what?" "For your own celebration." The guests gathered as Mia stepped up to the podium. Her voice was steady, clear, but threaded with gratitude. "This project is more than architecture," she said. "It is proof that change begins with kindness and that sometimes, the best stories are written by accident." When the applause faded, Jack joined her on stage, slipping his hand into hers. The cameras clicked again, but this time, their smiles were not for show. "There is one more announcement," Jack said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. A wave of surprise moved through the crowd. Mia stared at him, her breath catching. "Jack, I know we started with a contract," he said, his voice low and certain. "But this time, no signatures. No conditions. Just us." He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring, engraved inside with the number 603. The audience went silent. Mia covered her mouth, emotion spilling across her face. "You are really doing this in front of everyone?" "It seems to be our style," he said, smiling. "Mia Carter, will you marry me for real this time?" The room erupted in applause. She nodded, tears shining like glass in the light. "Yes," she whispered. Jack slipped the ring onto her finger as the crowd cheered. The cameras captured the moment, but it belonged only to them. Later that night, after the guests had left, they stood together in the empty gallery, surrounded by art and quiet. Mia leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know," she said, "I used to think love was just another transaction." Jack smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Then maybe this was the best deal we ever made." Outside, the city lights glowed against the night, and for once, neither of them felt the need to pretend. The contract that had begun their story was gone, replaced by something real, a promise sealed not with ink, but with love.